Welcome to our Optimizing Cybersecurity in a Changing Tech Landscape virtual event. I'm Ryan Heath, Global Technology Correspondent at Axios, and I'm coming to you today from New York City. Welcome to our audiences on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, and on Axios.com. Join the conversation today on Twitter, @Axios, and hashtag Axios Events. Over the next 30 minutes, we'll be exploring the importance of developing stronger cybersecurity measures in today's rapidly changing world while creating a more efficient user experience. Our first guest is the congressman representing New York's 2nd Congressional District on Long Island, Congressman Andrew Garbarino. He's joining us today from Washington, D.C. Hello, Congressman.
Hello, how are you?
Very well indeed. Now let's dive in. You've called cyber attacks the preeminent threat of our time. That, to me, implies a whole of society response. So I'd love to know, what do you think is the top priority for the government, and then the top priority for the private sector in securing our data?
Well, I think they both have to work together. It's really about partnership between the government and private sector, especially when 80% of our critical infrastructure is privately held. So making sure that the sharing of information, the sharing of potential attacks, the sharing of potential vulnerabilities or actual vulnerabilities, and doing that all quickly is something that the government and the private sector need to work together to do, because you're only as strong as your weakest link, and especially in cybersecurity. And, you really need a lot of knowledge. And the more that knowledge is shared, the better off we'll be.
And do you feel you're getting the cooperation you need out of the private sector? They're showing up with the information they need. They're working with the federal cybersecurity agency the way you'd like it to be?
Yeah, I've worked with a lot of CISOs. I've spoken to a lot of them, of different companies, different critical infrastructure sectors. And they all seem to be working well together. They share information with each other, which is good. Financial services industries share information with each other. Energy companies share information with each other. So that's good. And then they're also sharing a lot of information with CISA. Hopefully something I'd like to see, something I've heard from industry is, CISA getting them more actionable information sooner would be better. But right now, the partnership that they have, private companies are really enjoying working with CISA. CISA is really working well with them. It seems to be a very good partnership that we have right now.
And I've got a couple of questions on CISA, the cybersecurity agency, for you. So the companies want more actionable information from them. Do you think they need to step up and deliver that in order to get the 5% budget increase they've been asking for? Or is it a case that you think they're overwhelmed and they're just going to need more resources in order to be more useful to those companies?
Well, I think the problem is there's just so much information coming into CISA, and there's one of the big issues is there's over 750,000 open cybersecurity jobs, both in the private sector and public sector. I think there's about 700,000 private sector and 50,000 public sector jobs. So there aren't enough employees to go through all the information. So making sure that CISA can quickly hire the employees it needs. I think they are very well funded right now. I think that there is a look to continue to fund CISA appropriately. Something I've always supported. I know the chairman of the Cybersecurity or the Homeland Security Committee on Appropriations also supports proper funding of CISA. So I don't think that getting the information out to the companies quicker is a necessary tie to the funding level, but making sure that CISA has everything it needs to hire the employees to get that information out and to do other things as well is a top priority for us in this Congress, top priority for me. So I'm going to continue to push to make sure that CISA is properly funded. But CISA needs to, and they've been doing good. Director Easterly is really trying to up her game and make sure that they can get more employees through the pipeline. They've done a very good job, but they need to do a little better.
And those workforce issues certainly are chronic. We saw 24 federal agencies put out a joint warning last year using the numbers you just gave about how critical this shortage is. So I want to unpick that a little bit with you. Is that also a warning to all of us that maybe we need to quickly integrate AI systems, more AI systems, into dealing with these threats? Because it doesn't sound like 700,000 people are going to sort of walk around the corner and just sign up to be cyber workers anytime soon.
Well, and that it is a big issue, and that's actually our next hearing is going to be focused on growing the cyber workforce pipeline. We have a lot of private sector people coming in to testify about how we can grow that pipeline. But and some of actually have told me that they do use AI now for defense. So it already is being integrated. Yeah, you're right. 750,000 jobs, and the number is getting bigger every day. We are going to have to figure a way to have a short-term fix. But I also think we need to, start education on cybersecurity younger. You start talking about, you start using cyber terms in K through 12. It might get people more interested. A lot of people don't realize that these jobs are available. They don't realize that these jobs don't require a 4-year degree. A lot of them, you just need a certification that's only a couple weeks, couple months long. There are a lot of companies that do that, and it's your first step in the door. And then you can grow and update your ability while you're working those lower level jobs. And they are good paying lower level jobs. I just don't think enough people know about them. We did just pass a bill out of committee for Homeland Security, for the Department of Homeland Security, to offer training to other members of the department to try to get them into cyber. So that's something that we're trying to do on the government end. We have this hearing coming up, so we're going to hear how we can help with the private sector hiring. But right now, we should start educating people young. My nephew, he's 13. He's better on the cell phone than I am. But I don't know if he's interested in a cybersecurity job, but he would be great at it. You don't need to know how to write code to have a cybersecurity job. So we have to get people to know that.
And is some of that down to an education campaign that some part of the government could run? Or is that where you need to lean on the companies to say, hey, we've got these free short online courses. This is about skills. You can get this in 6 weeks. You don't need to have a 4-year degree and a load of debt in order to take up one of these jobs.
Yeah, absolutely. It's everybody. The answer to that is yes. It's schooling. It's companies getting out there to the schools, to the guidance counselors, to the principals, saying, "Hey, you know what? We can get these kids trained, and we can offer them hiring." And a lot of companies are starting to do this. They're starting to create their own little cyber programs, cyber internships. A lot of CISOs have started already with their own companies. So that could, it's an all of the above approach, schooling, private companies coming in and doing their own recruitment, doing their own training. And also, there's been talk of whether or not we should do a cyber academy here, similar to like West Point or the Naval Academy. It could be that's a big step, but it's also, could be a long-term fix for us. So it's an all of the above approach that we have to take here.
Well, it's certainly not going to become less of a priority in coming years. So I think you're onto something there. You've also recently become the chairman of the subcommittee on cybersecurity and infrastructure protection. What are your priorities in the committee there? What is the working relationship like with the other side of the aisle? Is this quite a bipartisan issue, or is it one where you've got some tricky waters to navigate?
No, it's pretty bipartisan. It was bipartisan in the previous Congress when I was ranking member. I worked very well with Chairwoman Clark. This year, I'm working very well with the ranking member, Swalwell. So it's cybersecurity. It doesn't matter if, a hack doesn't care if you're Republican or Democrat. They're just going in for the information. So it's going to hit us all the same way, whether you're Republican or Democrat. So this is something that we're both sides are heavily focused on, and we are working very well together. Myself and the ranking member have done multiple letters together to CISA. We're doing some legislation together. We're working on other legislation together. We're both going to we're doing a cyber codel soon we're doing bipartisan site visits, bipartisan trainings for members. We're working very well together.
Excellent. And are you traveling overseas? Where's the codel off to?
I'm not. I can't say where we're going to, but we are going overseas, and we are going to have some very important visits while we're over
A
there.
very important mission then. I guess my
Yes.
last question really is around the 2024 election. We've seen cybersecurity issues in recent elections. Is there anything there that you're keeping a close eye on, or you really want the companies to step up on as everyone prepares for the election cycle?
I think absolutely. Specifically with elections, CISA has been good keeping on top of or working with all the states and the secretaries of states in those states to make sure that the infrastructure hardware is protected. One of my subcommittee members, Laurel Lee, who was former Secretary of State for Florida, she has really taken an interest in this. So she's, we've let her take the ball and run with it. She's a great new member of Congress, and she's been working a lot on this issue. So making sure that our infrastructure, our election infrastructure, is protected, so there can't be any interference from inside or outside the country is one of our top priorities.
Representative Garbarino, thank you so much for joining us here at Axios.
Thank you.
And next, we have a view from the top segment with Chris Freites.
Hey, thanks, Ryan. And thank you to our sponsor, Okta, for making this conversation possible. And joining me now is Okta's Vice President of Government Affairs and Public Policy, Jim Green. Jim, welcome to Axios.
Chris, thanks so much for having me.
So, Jim, Okta is well known in the industry for being a leader in identity and access management. And I wonder, what exactly does that mean? And why is it so important from an organizational cybersecurity perspective?
Well, Chris, thanks again for having me. And yeah, when you say identity and access management, it doesn't exactly roll off the tongue, or people don't remember it so easily, do they? And generally in cybersecurity as well, when things are going really well, you never hear about it, and we're very proud when it's never heard about. But making headlines happens when something really bad happens, when a breach happens, when an attack happens. And so identity and access management is critical to thwarting those attacks that you have read about. And what it does is it keeps you and your workforce and your customers secure. And what it can do also is it can make the future what it needs to be. Passwords, as a great example, they've been used for most of the last 3 decades. They are not a great way to do identity and access management and to secure folks. So we're pressing for a passwordless future. One other way to think about why identity and access management is important and relevant today is you think about the hot topic of remote work or coming back to the office or hybrid work. No matter your opinion on that subject, which is garnering a lot of attention, the fact that you can have that conversation is partially in part because of identity and access management. So I'm talking to you here from Oakland, California. Okta's headquarters is in San Francisco across the bay. Well, I get to work here today because something that's really important to me, taking my daughter to her first summer camp, I'm going to do that once we're done with this interview. And so identity and access management, cybersecurity, really enables anyone, any organization to unlock their technology in the right ways, in the safe ways,
right,
and get into the right apps.
So I want to talk about that passwordless future because I think it's really exciting. And you guys are out with a new report today called Secure Sign-In Trends Report. And it talks about how the workplace is becoming more secure. It's becoming more productive. Why did Okta decide to release this report?
Well, we are bound by our values, our core values as a company, and it guides every decision that we make. And we believe that our values create value for our company. So 2 or 3 main reasons for that, for releasing the report. 1, transparency. We believe in sunlight on data. If you can see the data, you can become more informed, you can make better decisions. You can see the data that says going passwordless is actually more secure and provides a better user experience. We believe deeply in collaboration. So we want our customers to be successful. How can they be successful? Well, if we can give them this data to help them understand that their own journey towards adoption of MFA, towards adopting a passwordless future, is going to make their workforces much more productive and more secure. And then finally, leadership. We take our role as leaders in cybersecurity and certainly in identity and access management seriously. And so it's our responsibility to put out information like this so that others, customers and non-customers, can see the information, make informed decisions from that.
Okay, so give me the highlights here then, Jim. If I'm a company trying to secure my business, what should I take away from your report?
So I encourage everyone to read the entire report because it's full of great information, but I'm going to highlight two main areas for you today. The first is MFA adoption. Okay, so our data says that MFA adoption nearly doubled in just 3 years, from 2020 to today. Our workforce customers adopted MFA. It was at 35% in 2020. It's currently at 64%. Now, unpacking that stat just a little bit, from February to March of 2020, which of course was the first month of COVID, a very difficult time for, frankly, the entire world, we saw adoption from 35 to 50%. So if you're looking for silver linings from tough events, adoption really increased quite a bit. It's gone up another 15 points since that time, but we want to continue that trend where that is accelerating, where more and more organizations are adopting MFA. And the second, I think, core bit of information that people could take away from this report is that this false question of you need to decide whether or not you want strong security or a good user experience is bogus. It's outdated, it's stale. The report suggests that by actually having that stronger security, by going passwordless and doing other phishing-resistant authentication factors, you're actually creating a better user experience. How many times have you forgotten your password? I mean, I've forgotten my passwords to many different things, so many different times. So more secure, better user experience. You don't have to decide between the two.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense, because if it's not easy to use, you're not going to use it. And I want to talk to you about that acceleration, Jim, that you mentioned, and really kind of juicing this trend. What can the government do to help make a more secure and user-friendly environment going forward?
Government can do a lot. And I have to say, I think the Biden administration has been doing a lot. And so I applaud them for that. A couple executive orders early in year one, both talking about that strong security with the May Cybersecurity Health EO, and then later in the year with the customer experience, the Axios, that spoke to all of them. But they need to continue to do that, right? So budgets reflect values and priorities. They need to continue on the implementation side of all of these executive orders and what agencies have been doing as well. The second is awareness. Hey, there are 750,000 good paying cybersecurity jobs out there in the public and private sectors today. So the government can say, hey, get out there, get a great job. Third thing, final thing, partnership, continued public-private collaboration. People talk about it a lot, but hey, it is unbelievably important in a space as important as cybersecurity.
Okay, we'll have to leave it there. Jim Green is Okta's Vice President of Government Affairs and Public Policy. Jim, thank you so much for joining Axios.
Chris, I enjoyed it. Thank you.
And now back to Ryan Heath.
Thanks for that, Chris. Our final guest is the President and CEO of the Cyber Threat Alliance, Michael Daniel, who's joining us today from Arlington, Virginia. Hi, Michael.
Hi, Ryan. How's it going?
Great. I'd love to start the conversation by asking you about your alliance's sharing model, sharing information to work through cyber threats. And tell us, where are we in getting rid of the stigma of sharing vulnerabilities in order to tackle them?
Yeah, sure. So the way that the Cyber Threat Alliance works is that all of our members agree to provide a certain amount of technical threat intelligence on at least a weekly basis. And what I mean by technical threat intelligence are the indicators of compromise So things like a malware file or a bad IP address or a bad domain name or a command process for a computer. And all of that data comes in to a platform that we manage. And then all the other members are allowed to, take back and incorporate into their products and services what the other members have shared. And on average, we're running about 340 to 350,000 of those indicators per day go through our platform. But we also enable our members to share on a more human basis. So, connecting to each other, asking questions, giving each other heads up and that sort of thing. So that's really the sharing model that we have.
And does that work well with the National Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency? Are they sharing with you as well?
So we do not have a formal automated sharing relationship with CISA, as you mentioned. Governments are not allowed to be members of the Cyber Threat Alliance, and our sharing is currently restricted to members. That said, we are thinking about how we can continue to build out a relationship, not just with CISA, but with other kinds of national certs and things like that, because it is certainly, we need to continue expanding the scope and scale of that information sharing.
Now, thinking about the national cyber strategy, there's a real push now within the government to take some of the security burden off individuals. And that sounds great, but short of introducing some hardcore regulation, what do you think and what do your alliance members think is the best way to engineer that shift?
Well, it's going to take several different parts, and some of it will probably require legislation. For example, like I think that looking at how you implement a liability regime for software manufacturers, for example, to require them to close up known vulnerabilities in software, that's going to be a part of it. But also it's about, how do we renegotiate the social contract with, say, internet service providers? And by that, I mean, what kind of actions are we going to have it be okay for ISPs to take on our behalf? And what are they going to get? What kind of protections are they going to get? What kind of resources are they going to get in exchange for doing that? But what it's really about is finding those specific places that you could take cybersecurity actions and move them away from having to be done by the end user and have a more centralized, higher level organization perform that function.
And presumably that's ultimately just more efficient, and you're not relying on your grandparents to understand everything, but you're relying on the collective knowledge of a large organization to help out.
Yes, absolutely. Now, of course, obviously, we're not talking about moving all of the burden away, right? People will still have to have good passwords and use a password manager and multi-factor authentication and those kinds of things. But it's about realigning that burden so that not all of the security burden rests all the way out at the end user.
Now, a problem that crops up again and again in conversations I have on cybersecurity is that the cyber workforce has some serious shortfalls. There's just empty chairs, basically. And the problems are not as easily solvable as if you have a teacher shortage or a restaurant worker shortage where you just boost the pay and conditions. What are some of the sort of more valuable levers that you think are available to us to actually build out this workforce and therefore end up with more secure systems?
So I think there are several. First of all, starting with expectations, right? Which is that you can't be searching for, someone with, 8 to 10 years of experience that you're going to pay entry-level pay to, right? Like if you want 8 to 10 years of experience, you're going to pay for that. I think the other piece is really looking at how you bring in other parts of the workforce. How do you connect people that are in adjacent areas that may not even realize that they have skills that are useful in the cybersecurity domain, that with just a little bit of retraining or reskilling, they can become a cybersecurity professional. I think it's about continuing to expand the programs that are available at the university and graduate levels for producing cybersecurity graduates. right? It's about expanding apprenticeship programs and other things within companies. It's a variety of different ways to look at how you break down those barriers and make the position seem even more appealing to a wider variety of individuals.
There might be some people out there watching right now who think they could do this. What are some of those adjacent skill areas that, people should give a second thought to if they might want to be changing careers?
Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting when you actually look at like for example, a lot of cybersecurity is actually about understanding people and how people interact with the technology. So if you actually have, some background in, for example, behavioral economics, that's actually really useful for cybersecurity, thinking about how you actually get people to implement a security measure or stop a behavior, right? No, that's not about writing code on a keyboard, but that's actually a skill set that is actually very valuable to cybersecurity. Another thing is really about risk management. And even just thinking about how do you think about managing risk at an organizational level, that's very applicable to a lot of the complex cybersecurity problems that we have.
Now, the topic that everyone seems to be talking about these days is artificial intelligence. You've said that AI is not really a game changer in either direction for cybersecurity. Can you tell us a little bit more about why you think that's the case?
Yeah, so I think it's going to radically change certain aspects of cybersecurity. But what I really mean by that is that the adversaries, the malicious actors, will undoubtedly use, for example, generative AI to write better phishing emails. But at the same time, the defenders will use artificial intelligence and machine learning to do a better job of detecting phishing emails. You can use artificial intelligence to identify vulnerabilities in software more rapidly. Okay, well, that's beneficial to both the bad guys, but also for the good guys to actually find them and patch them. So what I really mean is that artificial intelligence will be used by both the adversaries and the defenders. And at any given point in time, it might actually provide an advantage to one or the other, but that over the long term, it's going to sort of even out. And mostly what we will see is a speeding up and an intensification of what is already happening in cyberspace.
And what about the cybersecurity around the AI models themselves? A story came out recently about how NVIDIA software has been tricked into leaking information, and you don't need to respond to that if you haven't read that story. But I just wonder, how can we secure these AI models, and how can we know if they're secure if they're black boxes and we can't really know what's going into them?
Yeah, now that's actually a much more interesting problem from my perspective, because the security of the AI systems themselves, we don't have a lot of experience with. We don't know, like, what does a vulnerability in an AI system look like, and how would a bad guy exploit it? As you mentioned, a lot of them are black boxes. How would we know if the data training sets had been poisoned in some way? How would we know if somebody had messed with the algorithms? So I think a lot of that is an area that is definitely worth a lot more research, a lot more experimentation, and a lot more thinking to be cognizant of. Because the one thing you can be sure of is that the adversaries will try to exploit and find vulnerabilities and take malicious action against those AI systems.
Well, if there's any lesson out of cybersecurity, it's that you can never be complacent about it. Michael, thank you so much for joining us here at Axios.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you all for joining us this afternoon for another virtual conversation that's made everyone smarter, faster. For more information on cybersecurity and technology, sign up to the Login newsletter by me and Ina Fried, or Sam Sabin's Codebook newsletter. To do that, visit axios.com/newsletters or on the Axios app. Thank you all for joining, and we'll see you again soon on axios.com.